Hi, it's Glassbox here, and today we're finally going to try and run WebDriver as part of our feature files. We're going to see how simple it can be to use WebDriver and run a Firefox browser instead of just printing out statements as we did in the previous tutorial. So we're going to jump straight into it and let's see what happens. So the first question we have to ask is, what is WebDriver? WebDriver is essentially a browser-friendly rich API application which allows someone to perform user functions on a web browser but through an automated test. What this means is this allows someone to write code which in turn can open up a web browser, perform actions, and also check to see that certain conditions are satisfied. In all, WebDriver allows a programmer to easily write tests which can be executed against an actual browser. Now, with that really basic definition of WebDriver out of the way, we need to do a couple of things, not many, to set up WebDriver. As we're still going through this manual process of setting everything up, what we need to do is go to Selenium HQ and download the Selenium server standalone jar. So if I just go to Google and I search for Selenium standalone server, and if I just go to this link here and I just download the Selenium server jar from here. So at the point of this tutorial video is 2.53.0. So let's just download that. Okay, so if I now go to my downloads folder, I am going to copy in this jar and place it in our jars directory. Okay. So with that done, the next thing we need to do is basically download Firefox. Now we have a couple of options. When it comes to actually running your tests via browsers, you can download other browsers if you wish, Chrome, IE, Safari, whichever you prefer. I'm going to go with Firefox for now, simply because my experience with running WebDriver based tests with Firefox is usually much easier than other browsers, although your experience may be different, of course. So I'm going to use Firefox. Now to use Firefox is actually really straightforward. All you have to do is make sure you have Firefox installed on your client machine. So in this case, I have Firefox already installed. And my version of Firefox at this point in time is 29.0. So I'm just going to stick to this version for now. I don't really want to upgrade. Okay. So with that done, what we've done so far is we've placed the WebDriver Selenium standalone jar in our jars folder, and we've made sure we've got a browser that works. Like I said, with Firefox, all it does is when you run your WebDriver test for Firefox, it just picks up the default installation of Firefox. So you don't have to provide any exes or anything like that. Now, before we actually run any tests, let's have a quick look at our feature file. So in this feature file, what we're trying to do is we're trying to navigate to the test room. So that's going to be our given. Then we're going to click on the Cucumber tutorial link. So that is this link here. Then we're going to check that the page title should be visible, which is, so if we click on Cucumber tutorial, we are going to check that this particular title, Java Cucumber tutorial dash the test room, is visible on the page. Now, this may not be the best test in the world, but for now, we're just going to go with a simple test. If we also have a look at our step definition class, then we can see that we're not really doing much. All we're doing is some really basic things. We're just printing out statements for each test step. So let's quickly compile the step definition class. and run our feature file. We can see that each step is able to match up to a step definition. Good. So now let's begin to actually see if we can satisfy the first step and try and open up a web browser as part of our step definition. Now, to use Cucumber, the first thing we need to do is actually import in the relevant libraries that we will use. So I am going to import in org, OpenQA, Selenium WebDriver. And since I said I'm going to use Firefox, I'm going to import in that also. So OpenQA, Selenium, Firefox driver. Okay. So like we said, as part of the first step, what I would like to do is actually create an instance of the driver. So I'm going to say driver is equal to new Firefox driver. And let's also call the driver.quit method. So what is happening here? So first of all, we're creating an object of driver and we're giving it the name driver, and we're instantiating the object as a Firefox driver. So what this means is, assuming this works, we should have a Firefox browser opened as part of our driver. If you want to use a different browser, this is where you would do it. So if you want to use something like Chrome or IE or Safari or whichever, this is where you would do it. So assuming we were able to instantiate driver, the next thing we're going to do is actually quit the driver, which is the same as saying just kill the driver because we don't need it anymore. So let's save this, compile it, and it looks like our code compiled, which is great. So now let's try and run our feature file and see what happens. Great. So that was really quick, but what happened was it printed out the print statement, but then I hope you noticed it actually opened a Firefox window and then closed it right away. So it looks like our code is actually able to run WebDriver code. Now that's good, that's great. Now we can take it a little bit further and actually try and satisfy the first step. So what we're going to do is we're going to comment out this line because we don't want to quit it anymore. And this time we will want to actually go to the test room. So I'm going to say driver.navigate to, and here I'm going to provide the URL for the test room. So that's http://www.thetestroom.com. And now what should happen is the driver should navigate to the test room. So what are these methods and what do they mean? When we say driver, this is basically WebDriver. And when we call the dot operator on this object, it gives us all the APIs that are available to the driver. So we can use a method called navigate to. Navigate.to allows us to actually go to particular URLs via the web browser. So all this is doing is basically telling the driver, open up a new Firefox window and then navigate to the testroom.com. And since we've commented out driver.quit, this time the browser should not close. So let's save this, compile the class, and notice that there were no errors, and run our feature file. Great. So let's just close the browser. So now you could see that it opened the Firefox browser, it navigated to the test room, and then the remaining test steps just continue to run. So that's good. Our first test step is now fully satisfied. We are able to navigate to the testroom.com. So now let's have a look at our second step. So in the second step, what we're trying to do is navigate to the Cucumber tutorial page. So if I open up this, what we're trying to do is essentially navigate to this link. So what we want the driver to do is simulate actually clicking on this link. So how can we do that? Similarly to how driver is able to navigate to a particular URL, the driver is also able to grab elements from a web page as well. Now we'll go into elements in a lot of detail in a future Cucumber video. For now, let's just try to focus on actually clicking on this link. Now the way WebDriver tries to find an element on a page is by looking at elements. So if we right click on this as a inspect element, then this gives us a little bit of information. In particular, this tells us that this link is inside what's called an anchor tag. Now WebDriver provides us with the abilities to find elements on a page and interact with them by looking and reading the HTML source of a given page. So in this instance, we actually want to click on Java Cucumber tutorial, which is inside an anchor tag. So if we go back to the driver, and for our second step, we're going to use a find element that comes as part of the driver. So we're going to say driver find element, and we're going to use the by method, and we're going to use link text, and we're going to pass in the value of Java Cucumber tutorial, and then click. So what is happening here? There's actually a lot happening here. Like I said, I'm going to go into a lot of detail about how this works, but for now, driver provides methods called find element. Find element allows us to find an element on a web page. So for instance, everything you see here, this text here, these links here, this picture here, they are all elements on a web page, including these social links, including this search box. An element to be identified on a web page can be done by looking at the HTML source. So in this instance, we have what's called an anchor tag. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's important you understand this. We have an anchor tag. An anchor tag is something that a WebDriver can use to identify an element. Inside the anchor tag, we have what's called the actual text. In this case, it's Java space Cucumber space tutorial. So in our code, what we're saying is find an element and find it by link text. Link text looks for anchor tags on a web page. And then we're providing the actual text of the link. Now this text, or the string that you enter into link text, is case sensitive, i.e. the casing of the letters, the spacing between the words, all has to match exactly for what you're looking for. So in this case, it's Java space Cucumber space tutorial, all uppercase for the first letter of each word. And we've done the same thing. So now that we know that this allows us to find an element, as part of WebDriver, once we find an element, we can actually perform certain actions on it. And in this case, we're performing the click action. The click action does what it says on the tin. It basically clicks on that element. So let's save this. Again, compile, and looks like there were errors. So what's the error? So the error is basically saying that it is unable to locate this particular class, which is good because we actually forgot to provide the necessary imports. So let's go back and let's import in that particular class. So it's import org openqa selenium by. Let's save that and compile again. Ah, okay, so now there's a different issue. So now it's basically complaining that it is unable to find this driver. In other words, this is a variable that you're using, but you haven't initialized it. And it's true, I haven't. If you have a look here, this driver is basically this driver here. However, because we've instantiated the driver inside this given step, when this step finishes, we've actually lost a reference to this particular object. In other words, the scope of this object is only within this method. So when we try and use the driver here, it can't do anything because it doesn't exist. So what we need to do is move the driver outside of this class so that it can then be used across multiple steps. So let's place the driver here, WebDriver, and let's obviously call it driver. And then in here, now if we get rid of this, what we're basically saying is we have a WebDriver, and because it is now outside every single step, it can be used in each step as long as it has been initialized somewhere. So in our given step, we are going to initialize it, and then we're going to use it again in our when step. So let's save this, compile, and run it. Great. So it looks like it clicked on the Java Cucumber tutorial link. Perfect. Now, the final thing to do is to actually try and get the page title. Now, again, this is very straightforward. Just as we have been accessing these navigate methods and these find methods, WebDriver has the ability to actually get the title of the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to print out the title of the page. We're going to say driver get title, and that's it. Let's save that, compile, and run it. Great. So it looks like it was also able to print out the title of the page. Okay, so I have cleared the screen. Let's just do one more quick thing, which is to close our driver as part of our last step. So I've removed the committed line from the first step, and I will just call driver.quit in our last step. So again, let's compile and run this. Great. So now you can see that when we ran our feature file, it was able to open up a web browser and navigate to the test room. It was able to click on the Cucumber tutorial webpage, and then it was able to print out the title of that page. And finally, it also closed the browser. So in this video tutorial, we now have seen first-hand proof that Cucumber works with WebDriver and actually works very well. Cucumber can be used to explain scenarios and features very nicely, and then we can use Java to take care of all the actual backbone work that is needed to drive Cucumber and allow us to actually automate our scenarios. Now, this is a very important step in this course because now we've established ourselves in such a position that we can start to write some really Cucumber and WebDriver orientated scenarios going forward. Thanks a lot for watching. Until next time, ciao. Hey guys, thanks ever so much for watching my video, as I really appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button below to stay up to date with my latest videos, and kindly like and share my videos, as this is one of the best ways for me to grow my ever evolving channel. If you have any ideas or suggestions for this video series, then let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, ciao.